Caring and conquests, let's play TTRPGs done right. War games and gaming, with Storm and Magenta tonight.
All right, let's do it. They're still over there talking, so I won't get much in the way of reply. But if you're over from TikTok or Substack, thanks for joining. Give a few minutes to see if anybody comes in. I will not talk to nobody. But we're going to give this a try. We're going to address some of the timekeeping things that are being brought up by other players and get it right. So go ahead and chime in, say hello, welcome, and we'll get going as soon as I know I'm talking to actual people. Yeah. Time is a real important part of these systems. You have to do it right. But there's a lot of overcomplication going on with people that think they're being purist players and stuff. So we're going to see how you make it easy and simple for folks. Real easy to do. Excuse me 1 minute. Okay. Pardon me while I press buttons. Anybody there? Bueller, hello. People coming in? I don't talk to nobody. I gotta know there's people here. Okay. Anybody? Hello. Welcome. Let's start about time. Let's get into it. Hit the yeah, it's a real shame. I don't need, I'm not big on pining for attention or anything like that, but these people are giving you bum steers on this Twitter stuff, and you just gotta, wish we could look at it in a better way. Okay. So I said game is of the utmost importance. Failure to keep careful track of time expenditure by player characters will result in many anomalies in the game. The structure of time is important. He gives a list of reasons why it's important. Things like creating magical items, things like learning language, healing. At the bottom of the paragraph describing why it's important, the best is all. All of these demands upon game time force choices upon player characters. The most succinct and best definition of a good game I've ever heard is a series of interesting decisions. When you wipe out all this stuff and say, well, complexity, you remove interesting strategic decisions. And that's why a lot of this stuff matters. Plus, if you're running along a large campaign with multiple moving parts, it it's very difficult to do without doing this in the proper means. Now, and here's the thing, folks. It may require a little bit of mathematics. So what? It's really not that hard. I think there's an undue amount of complaint and anxiety around remedial level math. If tracking and thinking and writing are not to your taste for a pastime, okay, we have video games and stuff for that. You shouldn't, you think you want to play RPG on a tabletop and then you annihilate everything that makes it an RPG. Now you're just playing a slow motion PC game. Why not just go to the PC? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. So in great big capital letters, you cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept. So uh, it goes on to give an example that starts to spin off course real fast in the first edition DMG, and it's one of the most confusing and frankly poorly written parts of a, a game that is really great, but these books were arranged in a horrible way. That's why so many people have tried to rearrange them or simplify them by taking notes and giving kind of retro clone versions of it, because the editing was just awful. So once you get down to the sake of example, the thing is so convoluted and incoherent that no wonder there's a lot of debate around it. But um, it does mention that you can use whatever calendar you want. If you want some thematic calendar, like I play Star Wars and I use a 36-hour day because somewhere in the lore there was a, galactic standard was 36 hours to kind of, standardize everything over millions of planets that all have a different rotational time and thus different days and so on and so forth. So, and again, it could have easily been 24 hours. I just wanted a little bit of theme in it. Now, he says here, use whatever gaming group of days you find desirable for your milieu, which is just a fancy way of saying your world, the place you're playing in, your social environment. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with the essentially what is the current Roman calendar. It sure makes things easy, and that's where some of these cultists, they glom onto that. Oh, I don't have to think. All I have to do is, go look at what the calendar is today. Okay, but that's not revolutionary. They seem to think it is. It's just the easiest way to do it. Um, there are good reasons not to do it that way as well, but that has to do more with your specific type of game and what you got going on. But it gets into a very complex description that has to do with um, games that are played where there's more than one character per player. The whole massive anxiety at the prospect of dividing up the party is just not there, because never really understood why people act like that's some earth-shattering thing to do. But it discusses, here's what you do if you have one character that has to go here and the other one has to go somewhere else, and how to run all that. But it's just a mess. And somewhere in here, it makes a comment, and the previous version made a comment about a week for week basis or a day for day basis. And some people have turned that into, well, I want to run one for one time like it says in there, and they use the 1:1 like a ratio. That's not going to work. Um, and here's an example of somebody doing that where it just becomes crazy. Let's get to their explanation. Let's see. What do we have to switch the thing here? They're currently on a live. I hope I don't accidentally broadcast it because I don't want to do that. Okay, there we go. All right. So one for one timekeeping. Oh, God. All right. First I got to turn it on so you can read along with me, so I don't have to narrate the thing to you. But okay, give me a second. Buttons that have to be pushed. Okay. Here we go. What is one for one timekeeping? First, I want to go over what timekeeping actually is for anyone not in the know. Okay. Running a game with one for one timekeeping means syncing your in-game calendar with the real-world calendar. Okay, so whoop-de-doo. All right. So that's just lacking imagination to come up with your own calendar, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, sometimes, it just makes things easier, but it's not always the best fit. Um, and with just a minimum amount of effort, it doesn't have to be, here's the thing about doing that. All right, do you have seasons in your world? You should. What if it's January here, but you are in a desert world? Well, it's fantasy. It doesn't matter. Okay, well then the Roman calendar doesn't either, and you can come up with something better. it's not that hard to keep track of. But okay, you stick with what's on the calendar at your house. Fine. Okay. Um, so if a party takes 2 weeks in game to travel to a dungeon, delve into it, and travel back, but if it takes 3 weeks in the real world to cover that part of the adventure, then why? Then when they return, they will have a week of downtime. Why? Why would they have a week of time to catch up with the real-time calendar? See, that's all convoluted and crazy. Here's how you do this to make it much easier. A, if your party's traveling, why aren't you focused on them? Especially in, this one mentions 5e specifically. Well, most 5e players, they're a completely different breed than first edition, and this stuff all comes out of first edition anyway. Are you really splitting your party? Who's going on a trip that is not part of your main focus? And even if it isn't, why do you have to have two different forms of time running? That's confusing as hell. That doesn't solve anything. That the whole point of timekeeping was to avoid those kind of things entirely. So what you want to do is, if let's change it to a member of your party for some reason, or a couple of them, they split up, and some of them take 2 weeks to travel to some other dungeon or something, um, for whatever reason. Okay, well, does it take 2 weeks to get there? You know, let's say it doesn't. Let's say it just takes 2 weeks, and that includes them delving into it. All right. But why do they have to return in some time jail? What is all the problem with bringing this up is what they're coming up with is so incoherent. I'm not really sure, even with reading the article, how to explain it to you, other than to say, don't do this. Here's the simple way to do this. Everything, no matter where it is, in the campaign, all is recorded as, okay, doing something and the time it takes to do it. Your party is taking 2 weeks to travel from one city to the other. Fine. Okay. Um, so you have another party, and they're spending those 2 weeks, or every day in a dungeon for 2 weeks or whatever. Fine. Write that down. Um, here's the easiest way to look at it. This is what how they do this. I mean, it's just like I'm confused just trying to explain it. Um, it's just gibberish, really. Image. Okay, let's see. Share. Okay, so let's look at a day planner. It's as simple as this. Well, now I can't find one that's filled out. But okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, no, that's my blind ass. Well, you've used a day planner. The point is, entity A is going from origin point to destination point, and it's going to take this long. In the meantime, everything else going on is happening at the same time. There's no jail or pause or any of that stuff. You just write down the time it expended for the task, no matter what it is, no matter what scale it is, no matter whether it's another NPC party or maybe even a wandering monster, armies on the march, the amount of days it takes to construct the wall on your castle, um, how many days the tournament is, whatever. Everything is just listed in expenditure, from drawing your sword or swinging it to building a tribute to travel. How long does it take? And then mark that down from that entity. So you can look at a day planner and see where everybody's going, or what they're doing for every minute and hour of the day based on that day planner. And the first thing people are going to say is, well, that would be crazy. I would have to have a one the size of a bed sheet. Well, if it's not terribly important to the plot or whatever, then it doesn't need to be on the day planner. But anything you want to coordinate, anything you want to happen at the same time, anything that is going on simultaneous with something else should be on that day planner. And then you don't have to deal with downtime or any of that. Um, what do they mean by this? In a smaller campaign with a handful of players, the DM is reasonable to expect the DM to arbitrate downtime. What the hell is downtime? What are you talking about? If the group expands to multiple adventuring parties with 10 plus players, you may have to deputize a few players to help arbitrate downtime activities as well. What does downtime even mean? What are they talking about? And why would you, again, whatever the hell that is, whatever they're doing, just how long does it take them to do it? And then compare that to everything else going on uh, at the same time, else in the world. Um, I'm not sure what Secret Chats. Let's see what Secret Chats. If you don't run online, secret game chats with every player will help you keep a record of downtime. Why would they have to be secret? What do you? I don't know. It is helpful if this is separate from your normal DMs with that player and easily searchable. But you just said it wasn't online. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Look, just fill out, get post-it notes and hand them to each other. Some of this stuff comes from modern people just refusing to put a writing implement to a piece of paper. It's not that hard. Um, Downtime quests. Well, that sounds contradictory. If you're questing, how is it downtime? Sometimes you may give players quest leads, or curiosities to investigate during their downtime. I guess apparently what they mean by downtime, now that I read it several times, you're talking about they're not at the table or whatever. Uh, I don't, again, it's just a mess. Maybe, uh, I mean, if you, uh, why would you have somebody conducting adventuring outside of the game table? If you wanted to do this, I don't know, maybe use an email and do it, um, like a play by post. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But again, if somebody is going in a different direction than somebody else, player wise or whatever, just notate how long it takes for player A going to the right and player B going to the left. What's the difference in time it takes to get to the player A's destination versus player B's destination, and mark that down. Now you have them moving simultaneously. You don't have to talk about any of these downtimes or any of that stuff, and your game actually will flow instead of whatever this is. You may take time before the session begins to educate any remaining downtime. I don't know, but that's not a thing for the way I play. I don't. So okay. Um, if the players end in a town, you can go ahead and calculate their XP for the session or adventure, and then take 10 to 15 minutes to educate downtime actions. Like what? Going to bed, or what? Learning spells or something like that? I don't know, man. Here's the thing. How long are you so down here? It sounds like downtime doesn't mean away from the table. It means like some. Are they saying what? Anywhere where you're not swinging a sword is downtime? If if you're in if you're in a hotel or an inn or whatever the hell it is, and you've got things going on, how long are you doing? How long are you there? Think about, this is just like trip planning, or I mean, it's so simple. Uh, if you just ignore all this junk. Okay, we went to just take a day in the life. We went to dinner. How long was dinner? Usually an hour and a half if you don't sit around and, it could be longer if you keep telling the waitress come back later and we'll order in a half an hour or whatever. But let's say anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. Okay. So what are you going to do with the rest of your night if you go back to your hotel room after dinner or the room in your inn or whatever? Um, Study your spells. All right. How long does that take? Let's go look at it. What level is it? Are you going to have enough time in the night to do that? And sleep. And if it takes 4 or 5 hours, just pulling numbers out of the hat, to study, but your party's only going to sleep for 8 hours, okay, then the wizard or MU or whatever it is sitting somewhere in the corner by candlelight reading his thing instead of sleeping. You should probably educate that when it comes time for him to fight or to make an 8 hour trek down the road, something like that. Fatigue was something that even people who say they're hardcore rules as written people, they don't do. But that's if you dump all this stuff and just think logically about the expenditure of time uh, without all the buzz phrases and the back and forths, you can easily figure all this stuff out and act accordingly. But again, it's all about how long does it take to do something, or or if it's how long do you decide to do something. If it's something that like training, theoretically you can train longer one day than the other if you want to, But if it's again, assembling a trebuchet or something, I know that's not something that a lot of people are doing in role playing games, but there's a general amount of time that takes. You're not going to do it faster or slower significantly. Maybe somebody who's better at it will, move a little quicker, but generally it's going to take this much time. How long does it take to mow my lawn? No, it's usually about the same amount of time if I do it right, right? So you plan for that. Well, I want to eat dinner at 6, but I wanted to mow the lawn before, and it takes 45 minutes to mow the lawn. So now I know what time to start mowing the lawn. But if it's I want to go on a bike ride today, but I only got a half an hour. Well, then you're only going to go as far as a half an hour will take you as far as distance, or probably half that, so that you can turn around and get back in time. But if it's Saturday afternoon, you got more time. You go, this time I want to go on a longer bike ride. Then you've decided to spend more time biking. You go farther, that's more time. This is all real simple stuff. Know how fast you're going, know how long you're going that speed. Now you know the distance you're going. Know the distance you're going at what speed, you know how much time it takes. Time, speed, distance. Just do this. Use this as your best friend when you're doing time stuff without all this nonsense that they're talking about. Go get one of these. I'll turn it on in a second. Here you go. This will make, and there's like 80 people in there just gobbling that stuff up. These people are pushing like it's some genius, and it's just making your life miserably complex. Um, let's see. Let me get this screen share on, then I see Dave talking, but let me just get it out. Okay, so here you go. Now you can solve for distance, so you can decide how far should I, as a game designer or a campaign, how far should um, an ox and cart go on my map for my game. Okay, you can go, you know, an ox walking is probably a little bit slower than a human actually, but we'll just, we don't have to get super persnickety. So let's just go with the usual human gait, which is 3 miles an hour. If you're not, okay, so 1 hour. So your game turns 1 hour. All right, 3 miles. Okay, so that's how far your ox and cart will go for one turn. How big is your hex? 5 miles? Yeah, okay. Most people aren't going to try to make up the difference. They're just going to say one hex, even though it's a little bit less than that. You know. something of that nature. But now you know how far it goes. So if I'm going to go down this road, road A, and the ox and cart's going to go down road B, you know, how far does it get versus how far I get? Let's say I'm on a horse or something like that, and I'm at a gallop. So now you're looking at, maybe I'm pulling this one out of my batute. I could go look it up, but let's just go with 10. So, a horse with minimal weight on it's going to move a little fast, 10 miles. So it's just, so now I know I'm going to go, 3x's on the horse for every hour, for every turn. That's how you come up with movement rates for any of these games on a map. And let's say somebody was spending an hour striking camp in the morning. Okay, so that's all. Say it takes about an hour to strike camp for 5 people. Now, so in the morning when you wake up, it'll be another hour before you get on the road, instead of pause time and all that stuff. So let's see what. Okay, so downtime is not not a. See, that's the thing. These guys. I mean, that's one definition, but some of these people, they say other things and they change the definition and all. I mean, so they're so confusing and whacked out. They're like a cult. They're strange people that browser stuff. The only reason for time is so that everyone doesn't. Well, yeah. I mean, so right. But I use it all the time the way I'm talking about, and it's not complicated, and that way everything's happening. It's not just the players; it's about everything going on at the same time, achieving simultaneity throughout the world. So I I do it in Star Wars, but I've stopped talking to the players about it because they just get mad and argue, and you'll never know if I don't say anything. But it keeps everything coordinated that way, so that if you're chasing somebody, like say for example, oh, we've got this intelligence that this guy that we want to capture or eliminate is on this planet. Okay, instead of being the very gamey and unrealistic, oh, you showed up there and there he is, because I have a whole moving galaxy and stuff, he might have decided to leave. You know, by the time you're en route, it takes you so many days in hyperspace to get to the place. He might have already checked out. He might have already taken a ship and left, something of that nature. And without time and coordinating everything based on how long it takes and the different actions that they're taking, it's just all made up stuff where I go, well, this is going to be the scene. They're going to arrive at the planet and they're going to find the guy, and now it's a scripted movie as opposed to a game where things are all moving at the same time. That's why I use time. That's what they were talking about with these campaigns. Works, it's the same thing with wargaming and stuff like that. But these browser people and the stuff that they come up with. So let's time jail. Here's another one. What the hell are they? Sometimes characters will get ahead in the calendar. Again, if you use my system as opposed to this convoluted word salad of a system, that won't ever happen. There is no getting ahead, getting behind. There's no different timelines or any of this stuff that she's writing about. This can happen if they travel a long distance or cover multiple weeks of activities in just a single week of play. Well, then how are you? Here's the problem. The whole concept of this is one for one. We're syncing the calendar of the real world up to this, but you've just said that there's a situation where they will move at sometimes, or time will spin twice as fast for some people as it will for others. So that's not one for one by definition. They keep using that 1:1, and it's nothing. And it's gibberish. So, so okay. So I don't know what the anyway. It's very bizarre. So it's just a lot of nonsense. And um, you know, the thing that I got from the female browser was, well, I've used it and it works well. Okay, I mean it functioned okay or whatever. Well, look, if I said hey, you can drive a Pinto backwards for 80 miles. Okay, maybe you can. And if you keep the thing straight, it functioned well. But it's inefficient and clunky to do, with your head back and all that. Um, this is a much more efficient way. All of the pause time and jail time and all that stuff, it doesn't apply. No matter whether you're at the table or not, when you use elapsed time per action, then you have total coordination so much easier. It's almost like they're so averted to lead and paper that they come up with this convoluted nonsense just so they don't have to write something down or something. It's kind of cuckoo. Um, but but they got these people conned. I can't believe how many people that watch that stuff. So um, let's try again with the. It might help if I can find one that's actually filled out. Here's one. Can we see this? Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So well, this is more a schedule than a day planner. This is some elementary school shit. Let's get an actual. I don't care about. There we go. There we go. Something like this, maybe. Yeah, they're not even. My search foo is failing me. Okay, here's a little bit better. Can we make this bigger? Okay. So see how the things, well, there are different days or whatever. So the difference between a weekly day planner and what I'm talking about is there would be more than one entity per day. So using something like Excel, and I know that's where people go, oh, I would never play a game without Excel. Okay, whatever. But just having, uh, you know, whatever entities, and by entities, if it's wargaming with different units or it's D&D with NPC parties versus player parties or whatever, have a column for each day of the week, and then they'll come out this way where you see things overlap, and you can say, okay, well, the party's right now in transit here, but the enemy party is in transit here, or they're in a dungeon or something like that. And when all of this plays out in a way that's like simultaneous or close to trying to achieve that simultaneity, all you need to know is what is the thing doing and how long is it doing it for, instead of this all this stuff with downtime and all this, you know, huge bunch of stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. So, um, and all of this is just based on, just like I said, knowing a little bit of math to know, or just having a list of things and giving them a basic amount of time that it takes. Um, but but yeah, like Dave says, I'm going to make the DM wait 2 years. If you would align it to today's calendar, then how would you ever play a game like that? And you talk to them and they go, we don't really mean real time like that. But then they explain it to you and they go, yeah, your explanation indicates that that is indeed what you mean. That every minute in the world expended is a minute in your world expended, and you cannot possibly maintain that. And then you go to their articles and you read it, and it contradicts what they're saying, and it contradicts even what the article says from paragraph to paragraph, where it says this isn't about um, one for like real time, and you've got different speeds of time existing in different places in your world. What an absolute mess. So it doesn't coordinate anything. Um, and it's certainly not. The other thing is that they claim that this is something that was used extensively in the past and was forgotten about. No, it wasn't, because there were better methods that came up years ago, like the one I'm talking about, or simply plotting things out on a map as far as movement. You know, here's how far my troops move in one day based on the 3 mile gate. Here's the terrain that they're going through. So here's how much you know uh, distance they've covered for the turn. Here's how much distance the other one's covered for the turn. Maybe they're in better terrain, so they might go a little farther. And you know, real simple stuff like that. And they were doing that in Kriegspiel in the 1800s. They were doing it with Thomas Malkin's game in the 1790s. All the guys that I know Gary read, because Gary told me he read this stuff, like Donald Featherstone and Charles Grant and Jack Scrooby and uh, Tony Bath. They all did it the way I'm talking about. Nobody did whatever the hell all that was. Um, yeah, no, it doesn't. Well, here's the thing. The trolls will come later because, as far as I know, they're still having um, their live, and they're in the Harmon. What's her name? Harmony Ginger. They're still having their thing. So um, I I chose 8 p.m. because that's what I've been choosing for 8 p.m. For days now to remain consistent, and then go and see that they're doing theirs at 8 p.m. or something like that too. So they've got the majority of the, she gets a lot of people following her, which is okay, but they're pushing this stuff, and people are like, well, I want to listen to the experts, and she's got, and she's pretty and all that. I want if people say, well, you sound like sour grapes, okay. I the point is that have whatever you want to do for your game, but the sticking point with me is trying to sell this as some sort of innovative thing when it's 50 years old, and making the insistence that we didn't keep time in the past. We absolutely did, and but we did it right. We didn't do what was in the DMG because it was a complete cluster f, and they, it just didn't make any damn sense. And we had already been doing it with war games prior. At least my group had. So we used what worked. The same thing we did for every war game. And when you read stuff like Tony Bass, games and his discussion of them, and all these people that we're talking about, they did it the same way. I don't know why they came up with that for the DMG. I don't know what the deal was. Um, I just think it was poor edited writing in the explanation. The 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 DMG makes sense until you hit the paragraph on page 37 that says, "For the sake of example," and it gets worse as you go. By the time you're half a page deep in that explanation, coherency has gone out the window. And I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but that's just it. How much time does it take to do what you're doing? And sometimes that's a choice because you've decided to go for, like, force march. If a bunch of Here's how far you can go in a day. If you do force march, you can go a little bit further, but you're going to be a lot more tired. So that's a choice to maintain a pace. Or it's something like, how long does it take to build a cart? That's basically going to be the same. And sure, if you want to get super persnickety and pick bones with me, you can say, well, what if I've got two imbeciles that don't know how to put a card together? Yeah, it'll take a lot longer. I get it. But those are the kind of things that can be modified if you want to include that in your game, um, based on a benchmark. It should take this long. If you've got two guys that have intelligence 8 doing it, it might take this much longer. You can modify it, something like that. But yeah, I suspect there'll be trolls coming in possibly once that thing shuts down. So, um, is there anybody else out there that have I know I'm sometimes fail on explanations. So, um, questions, comments, parts that weren't coherent, anything like that. Oops. See where they're at. Nope. I promoted this pretty well all over TikTok and stuff like that too, but I didn't know if that would bring people in or anything like that. But the reason you do this is because it eliminates. I see so many people, especially in TikTok and 5e players, going, well, it's really difficult to DM, and there's all this complexity, and I have to write a scene, and I have to be a producer and maintain the pace, and we never had to do any of that stuff. Um, don't use scenes. Don't use try emergent play. It makes everything a lot easier. By tracking how long it takes something to do in the way that I'm doing, it becomes second nature, and it isn't an imposition on record keeping. It's just the way it is. Oh, you've decided today for your party to walk to this place. Here's how long that's going to take, something like that. And instead of trying to write a script or a story, just let it happen. You know, let them decide where they're going to go, and be prepared to just be a physics engine instead of trying to write up a scene for every place that they go. If they walk into some dungeon, don't worry that you haven't prepped, because you wouldn't even have to draw the dungeon. All you'd have to say is, here's the entrance. You can roll up every hallway and room and um, monster and treasure and everything. Hell, I got um, random tables that'll tell you what kind of furniture's inside an old abandoned place. So the whole thing, the way it looks, the size of it, what it's made of, everything can be rolled up, and that way it's a surprise to you. It's fun to riff with the players as opposed to reading from a script, you know, and all that. Um, but if there's no time element to it, then everything starts to lose consistency, and things may not make sense. But now, as far as not being at the table and the game keep going or something, that just doesn't make sense. That's like driving a Winnebago and getting up from the steering wheel and walking away and think, oh, it'll just keep going. No, you're not going to keep playing with your players absent or something like that. What they did is they heard some stories that Rob and people told about playing the game over the telephone and maintaining contact over the days to keep putting in orders and stuff like that. And if you want to do that through email or DM, great. You can continue play by post if you desire, outside of your face-to-face meetings. But again, the best way to coordinate that is not to go through the obstacle course of jargon that thing was in that article, and just use the system I said. Here's all, to maintain consistency and to record what everybody's doing at any one particular time. That's the best part of it. It works. So I had one of these guys converted when I explained it to him. The rest of them, you know, they'll take this stuff to their grave because they're so fanatic. They're like a cult. You know? um, but let me know if you've got any other questions or whatever. It says that there are several people in here, but it sometimes it lies. So we'll just see where it goes. Hell, I'm getting more people talking in Twitter replies than anything. So see if there's anybody talk. I got to look at a different screen to know about Twitter because it doesn't work right here or whatever. Well, we'll read the Twitter. Okay, somebody says more cult crap. So yeah, they are kind of a weird cult. Yeah. Well, doesn't seem like there's anybody who's really all that interested in it, which that's okay. I just I brought it up because I saw this lady brought it up, and it bothers me because these people try to tell me, well, you weren't doing this in 1980. Nobody was. We indeed were. We were just doing it right. I could exemplify it on a board if we wanted to. That might be something to do too. But without any interaction, I start to lose interest and attention span. So if there's nobody here listening, I'm out. So I'll give it a couple of seconds, see if there's anybody still here. Otherwise, I'll just mosey on back to my Star Wars game. Yeah. Nope. Anything? No. Okay. All right then. We'll let her hang it up for the night. I actually did expect more people, but such is life. See you later. Oh, we got one more according to this, so we'll see. Anybody? Somebody just joined, so you know, go ahead and say hi if you want. Otherwise, we were wrapping it up. No? Okay. Okay. Well, let's give it a. I'll hang out for a second because hers just ended. We'll see if any of them come in here to start trouble. But me and gawkers and all that. If you're not going to talk, I don't want to just be stared at. I feel like I'm in a fishbowl. Okay.